Greetings, car fanatics. Today we're going to be doing more modifications to the 997. So I've been meaning to change out my engine mounts. I'm going to be replacing them with these Rennline semi-solid engine mounts. Big shout out to Rennline for sending me a pair of these. In this video I'll walk you through step-by-step instructions, but even if you don't have a 911, I recommend you stick around and watch this video because I'm going to be showing you some really cool before and after effects, so this should be super entertaining. So these are OEM engine mounts, and these engine mounts are designed to be softer to reduce NVH, but look how easy it is to flex this when the engine is bolted onto this and this is bolted to the chassis. Just imagine how much the engine's going back and forth. So we're going to be upgrading to these Rennline semi-solid engine mounts. Let's take a look at what the kit comes with. So you have these three pieces right here, and it just comes together like this. You put the bushing in. And then that fits inside here. After that, you're going to put this other bushing in, like so. Then you're going to put this concave section in. And then you add your stud here. And then this other nut goes in. And that's going to keep it in place. And essentially, that's how you have this. It also comes with all the hardware you need. The only thing you're going to reuse from your stock are the bolts that go on the top of it here. Okay, so to get the job done, you're going to need just a few tools. You need this 17mm wrench, and that's basically to adjust the little square nut right here. You also need an extension. You need a 13mm socket, an 18mm socket, flathead screwdriver, a ratchet of course, a torque wrench. You'll need two types of thread locker here. So red, which is basically permanent, and that's going to be for the stud. And then you have a medium thread locker, which you can still remove. And then you'll need some PPE, so some safety glasses, some gloves. And then finally, you will need a jack, and this is going to help you jack up the motor so you can take the engine mounts out. And to distribute the weight, you want to have a big piece of wood. But let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so let's take a look at the engine mount. The engine mount is just right here. It's held on by these two 13mm bolts and then one 18mm nut on the bottom, and then you'll just have to lift up the engine and you'll be able to take these out. There's one on the other side. Now to get to this, we're going to have to remove the air box, which I'll show you how to do right now. I'm going to start by loosening this hose clamp over here. Alright, that's going to allow it to come off the air box. Then we just need to take off a few clips. Next we have to remove this connector, which has a clip on the back. Just kind of squeeze it, and it should come right out. We also have a solenoid over here, which we'll just remove. Okay, and I think that should be it. And we should be able to pull the airbox out. Let's take off this connector over here. Oh, looks like we got a little snag. So now we can just simply disconnect this line and push it out. And this right here should just come out. Alright, got that out. Okay, now it's time to lift the engine just slightly. We're going to use a piece of wood to distribute the weight, and we're going to use a normal jack to jack it up just slightly. So just taking a little bit of weight off so I can take the bolts off of the engine mount over here. Okay guys, we have one of the engine mounts installed. I went ahead and did one side first just to make sure I know what I'm doing for this video, but let's go ahead and get off the other side. I actually discovered that the 997.2 does not use a 18mm nut for the bottom of the engine mount. It actually uses this torque spit. It's a T55, so let's go ahead and get that removed. Okay, we got it on. Let's get this off. Okay. Alright, there you go, we got it out. So now let's go ahead and take off the top 13mm bolts. Should be easy peasy. So the bolts come right on out, and we should just be able to lift up the motor mount. Got the motor mount out. Okay, so this is probably the trickiest part of the entire installation, which is torquing this stud down to 30 foot-pounds. I don't have a vice grip that's mounted onto like a table or something. That would be perfect, so I'm going to have to try to do my best We're going to be using the red thread locker, so when you put this on, you really can't go back. So pro tip, you can use these two nuts. Just make sure to have these flanges facing opposing directions. That way you can take it off later. Don't mind the flip-flops. You know that's how I work. All right, we're able to torque it to 30 foot-pounds. Hooray! Let's go ahead and set up the new one. Now, the pieces, I showed you how they go together. You put the bushings in, you put this concave portion, and then we torqued it to 30 foot-pounds. Now we're going to tighten this up. Okay, so we're gonna tighten this up as much as we can to line it up with the original one, but we'll probably have to fine-tune it when it's in the engine bay. So now we're gonna have to line up the engine mount with the engine carrier. As you notice here, there's a little rectangular cutout, and that needs to match this thing. Okay, so we'll start by putting these 13mm bolts back in just to kind of hold it in place. So kind of hard to tell if it's gonna line up right now. We're gonna jack it up and see how close we can get. Okay, it looks like we lined it up perfectly on the first time. That's awesome. Let's go ahead and fasten the 18mm bolt from the bottom, and that should get us set up so we can tighten these. Okay, now it's time to tighten these bolts to 18 foot-pounds. Okay, gonna put a little bit of Loctite on these. Okay, now it's time to torque these down to 18 foot-pounds. The last step is simply to torque down the nut over here down to 60 foot-pounds. Okay, now we can actually lift the motor down. Let's go ahead and do that. All right, let's just go ahead and put the intake back on. Okay, so the very last thing to do is actually adjust the exhaust tips, because look, I put the new engine mounts in, and as a result, the engine sits a little bit higher, which raises the exhaust tips. There must have been some sagging going on with the engine mounts, but let's go ahead and just adjust these exhaust tips. Alright, now that we have the new engine mounts installed, let's go ahead and do a before and after and look at how the engine shakes on startup. Alright, so let's do another before and after comparison. So what I'm doing now is I have the car in gear, I have my foot on the brake, and I'm slowly letting out the clutch to engage the engine just slightly, and then I'm pressing the clutch back in, and I'm repeating this. Okay, wow, so if you look at the before and after, it's pretty amazing. In the before, when I'm letting out the clutch, you can see that the engine is actually moving, but the car really isn't. In the after, when I let off the clutch, you can actually see that the car is moving forward, and there's virtually no movement of the engine relative to the chassis. So I think the difference is pretty clear with the new engine mounts versus the stock OEM engine mounts with 72,000 miles on them. Okay, so we got everything installed. Let's start the car and see how it sounds. Just starting up the car, there's a little bit more vibration. I can feel it a little in the seat of my pants, but it's not too bad, and this was kind of to be expected. Okay, so when I get going, I definitely feel a little bit more noise, and it actually sounds great. The other thing I'm noticing is when I get off the clutch, I don't feel the engine shaking or anything. It almost feels like the initial response is better. The clutch just grabs. I can let off the car and I don't really feel the revs dropping. And the car just moves. It almost feels like it has more low-end power. That's pretty amazing. Oh yeah, it's definitely louder. Okay. You know, for some of those that don't want their exhaust to be too loud, but they want the noise to come into the cabin, some engine mounts would definitely do that. And I'm getting some kind of vibration from the door over there. It could be the door handle or maybe the speaker. It's pretty annoying, but I'll probably have to figure out what the culprit is in the door, because I've always had a rattle like that, but with the motor mounts, I hear it a lot more now. 100% I can tell already. Throttle response is better. So I'm in third gear, 3,000 RPM. Let me just press the gas a little bit. There's no delay at all. Before, if I felt like I was in too high of a gear and I got on the gas, I felt the car just kind of lag a little bit, like the engine was bogging. I think it was just actually moving around. But okay, the car definitely feels like it has better throttle response. Alright, the engine is almost warmed up. Okay, getting up in the rev range, I definitely feel a lot more noise. Oh yeah, that is nice. Some people might find that a little bit annoying. It's not really drone, it's just I can feel the engine. So let's go ahead and get in the right lane here. Okay. Oh yeah. Everything just feels tighter. Alright, so let me kind of sum up my thoughts on these engine mounts. Overall, I love them. So despite that annoying rattle, that was something I had before. And of course, the extra NVH that comes through, I think it's minimal. And if anything, it makes the car a lot more visceral to drive. But if you have an older car with some vibrations, just know that going with stiffer engine mounts is going to transmit that vibration into the cabin, and anything that's loose and already vibrating is probably going to vibrate more. So you'll have to get that fixed. But I have to say, the car has been totally transformed. No more do I have issues getting the car into first gear. All the shifts feel really smooth, so I definitely recommend these engine mounts if you want a more sporty driving experience, a more visceral driving experience, and something that's going to make your car feel a little bit more like a GT car that's still very streetable. Well, thanks for watching, Car Fanatics. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to hit the bell notification icon so you're notified every time I upload a new video. Thanks for watching. Leave any comments or questions below.